We'll now move on to the next speaker, Dr. Adrian Haack, who will cover exactly this, as to how geopolitical activities impact upon connectivity through shipping and trade, and also the lessons learned out of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on and its impact on connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, first of all, I would like to thank NMF for organizing this great event. We as Konrad Adenauer Foundation, we are very thankful that we are part of it. And it's a highlight of my personal annual calendar as well. So I was asked to speak about lessons for the Indo-Pacific from Russia-Ukraine conflict vis-a-vis maritime shipping and trade, in particular on East Africa. And I will structure my speech in 3 parts. The first part, I will have a military focus on the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea, and we will look to strategic aspects where we can draw conclusions for the Indo-Pacific as a whole. In the second part, I would like to give justice to the addition of the title and focus in particular on East Africa's coast, and there focus on the use of maritime drones we have seen in this Ukraine war. And in the third segment, I want to cover a topic which is a specific part of maritime shipping and which is the traffic of food over the Black Sea, especially grain from Ukraine. Let me first of all address some aspects which cannot be transferred from the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea to the Indo-Pacific, but still teach us some lessons. And let me preface my review. These aspects make the Indo-Pacific significantly more riskier than the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea. And this might sound illogical at first, but I will try to underline it with some arguments. Ladies and gentlemen, the aggressor in this conflict, namely Russia, has actually no interest in a maritime escalation in rather the Black Sea or the Baltic Sea. St. Petersburg and the other Baltic harbors make the majority of Russia's trade, while for comparison, they only make, in case of Germany, the Baltic ports make less than 15%. The only access to the Baltic Sea is controlled by Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, and they are just more NATO units on the Baltic Sea than Russian units. So it's very obvious that there is no positive scenario of an escalation from the perspective of Moscow. And just a side note, we should not misinterpret the numbers we get from St. Petersburg harbor, or we got last year, because there was a very hard drop of container shipping in St. Petersburg harbor last year, more than 80%, but there was never an issue with shipping. So there was actually no confusions on the maritime traffic over the Baltic Sea. It was only due to the sanctions, and as we see in 2020, the port of St. Petersburg has more or less completely recovered of that. Now let us look on the Black Sea. Tensions were higher there. We had a search of a Turkish cargo vessel. We had this fuel attack on a US drone. But we never really had the serious attempt of the Russian Navy to implement a blockade on the Black Sea. So we can summarize, there was a lot of barking but no real biting. And the reason here is obvious as well. So in both cases, we have a situation in which the aggressor cannot really draw a positive scenario of a maritime military escalation. In both cases, we also have relatively small sea areas. So the Indo-Pacific has, of course, way bigger dimensions. So the distance from Odessa to Istanbul is way less than, for example, from Mumbai to Djibouti, approximately 5 times. And the Black Sea is 160 times smaller than the Indian Ocean in total. So it's very obvious, trade routes in the Indo-Pacific are much harder to have an eye on. and the military response time is longer than on the other two sea areas described here. Another aspect is that in both sea areas, Black Sea and Baltic Sea, we have very clear political situation on the coast. That means both seas are actually, you can say, NATO lakes plus Russia. And that's, of course, a lot of commitment due to this collective system of defense. And this is also a big difference to the Indo-Pacific. And therefore, the comparison of NATO and Quad was always inaccurate, because Quad was never designed as a system of collective defense. So any aggressor who gets into a maritime conflict with one of the Quad countries can draw very different scenarios how the others will react, and it's a different situation than we have in the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea. And this is a very important lesson from the war in Ukraine. Because we can suggest that beforehand, so before Russia started its invasion, they must have think about possible scenarios. And most likely they considered Ukraine to be kind of an easy prey, and that's why they took the decision to start this military operation. But I'm pretty sure all the worst case scenarios they were drawing were not as worse as the current situation. And this shows something which was a big mistake also in German security policy between 2014 and 2024. Indecision or not reacting is actually triggering an aggressor even more than showing aggression yourself. So what does that mean for the Indo-Pacific? The Indo-Pacific is politically more fragmented. It's a much bigger area with many more countries and several systems of alignment. And therefore, and I had this thesis in the beginning, therefore I think trade routes are risky, have a bigger risk within the Indo-Pacific than in the Baltic Sea or the Black Sea. Or let's put it the other way around. It takes much more effort to stabilize this sea area than in the other two cases, because the stabilizing factors are not existing here yet. Ladies and gentlemen, as the title suggests, let us look on East Africa. This is the second part of my speech. And we have, of course, several narrows in the Indo-Pacific, maybe the 8 or 9 or 10 degree channel, but two narrows I want to mention in the east coast of Africa, which are the Gulf of Aden and the Strait of Hormuz. And as you all know better than I do, these two narrows are extremely important for the global supply chain, but especially for the energy supply of the globe. Now let's keep this in mind. And in addition to that, with Yemen, which is kind of under the control of Iran, and Iran itself, both of these narrows have a coast with Iran. Let's keep this in mind and look at the Black Sea. In this warfare at the Black Sea, for the first time, we saw the use of these black maritime drones we all know from the news. And I find the videos taken by these drones very remarkable, especially one from October near Sevastopol, where we see these drones attacking a Russian vessel, and we see direct fire, machine gun fire from a helicopter, the ship itself, and we also see fire from the cannon exploding next to the drone. However, it was not possible to stop all the drones, and we can have the assumption that these drones most likely are able to hit some targets, at least with a small caliber, which is a big difference to flying kamikaze drones. And furthermore, it's of course easier to make a weight swim than fly, so we can estimate that the warhead or the explosive carriage of these drones is more than double as of a Shahed drone. And in addition to that, these drones are a self-product of Ukraine. They cost approximately 200,000 until 250,000 euros or dollar, and they are less than 6 meters long. So that actually means They're very easy to afford. They're very easy to store. They're very easy to hide. They're very easy to transport. And they're very easy to use. And the Russians thankfully did the practical tests for us already. And they suffered heavy losses, of course, against an enemy without a navy. But of course, the drones were not able to maintain a sea power on a certain area. But finally, the withdrawal of the Black Sea Fleet from Sevastopol was the result to get them out of the range of the drones. So these inexpensive, easy to hide and unmanned weapons open a completely new possibilities of hybrid warfare on the seas. And this is something which I think is a big concern for all other sea areas, but as well for the Gulf of Aden and the Strait of Hormuz. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we should prepare for a scenario in which similar kind of drones with no flag appear at these narrows and create a disruption. Let's put it that way, to create a great disruption for global trade lines. Let me now come to the third part of my speech, distinguished guest. Let me touch a topic which was already teased yesterday. Ukraine is one of the largest producers of agricultural goods. And till July 22, we had a very stable agreement called the so-called grain deal, which was mostly supported by Turkey. And this agreement was terminated July 23. Even though the conditions didn't change, it was terminated for other reasons. However, there was never a serious attempt to create a naval blockade. Approximately 70 to 100 ships reached or left Odessa since then. And the reason is very simple. Turkey is one of the biggest importer of Ukrainian grain and also has the dominant naval force on the Black Sea. But we have seen a massive shelling of agricultural goods. July 21st, approximately 100 tons of peas. August 2nd, 40 tons of grain. August 23, 13 tons of grain. So we assume there must be 220,000 tons of agricultural goods destroyed. There are also Ukrainian figures talking about 300,000 already. And these agricultural goods, they were intended for export. So the supporter countries of Ukraine, mainly located in Europe and the US, they have more than enough agriculture themselves. So it is actually a systematic bombing of the food for Africa, the Middle East, and the so-called Global South. And it is very interesting since Konrad Adenauer Foundation has 210 offices all over the world. Here in India, we talk about the war in Europe, while in the MENA region, this term does not really exist. So the people in Morocco and Lebanon and in other parts of the MENA region, they are pretty much aware that they are part of the conflict already. Since the export of Ukrainian agricultural goods is essential for approximately 400 million people. And ladies and gentlemen, it's essential for 400 million people, extremely uninvolved. So at least there is no military reason for this kind of warfare. And it hurts the people on the other side of the supply chain much more than the Ukrainian side. And at the same time, we see that Russia is making 25,000 tons of agricultural good available for Africa. But once again, this is approximately 10% of the amount they destroyed beforehand. So is there a lesson for the Indo-Pacific? And I would say it's a lesson for the entire world, not only in the Pacific. We should get these dimensions clear. 220,000 tons, if we imagine this, in this kind of standard floor bags, you could place the bags around the globe more than once. Yeah? You can build a 5-meter tall wall from Delhi to Mumbai. There's always been attacks and strikes on trade routes of the enemy, and there has been attacks on the food supply of the enemy as well. But I couldn't find any example where there were strikes on the food supply intended to be exported. It is in all of our interest that this way of Russian warfare is not becoming part of the military toolbox of any other country. Thank you very much.